Hey guys, Spencer Van here, and look, you're going to get exactly what was promised in the title of this video as well as the thumbnail of this video, which is the exact roadmap that anybody needs really to scale a surplus fund business and put it on what we call autopilot. Now, of course, I want to start with just a disclaimer. I'm not the all-knowing God of surplus funds. I don't know everything there is to know about surplus funds. I wish I was that smart, but I feel qualified to be able to teach this stuff because in my higher level mastermind program called Scale Master, we've had a ton of people come into that program that literally have never even done a deal before and be able to get them up and running with a very efficient business and scaling as quickly as humanly possible. Now, I want to make this clear. This is not a pitch video for Scale Mastery. We do not sell Scale Mastery over the internet. You actually have to talk to us on the phone. We do an application process, all that. So literally, I'm not selling anything in any of these videos. But with that being said, if you are interested in getting a customized, one-on-one plan for kind of what makes sense for you wherever you are on that journey, I'd really recommend clicking that link down below at the end of this video and watching a short 20-minute training I did put on specifically scaling businesses and then book a call with one of our team members here. The reason why I'm doing this is because as great as videos are, because videos are amazing, I can teach you guys a lot in videos, I can't actually talk to you on the videos, right? And so on a phone call, we can actually talk to you, figure out exactly where you're at, and give you specific advice for what makes sense for you. So that's basically my only pitch for you. It's completely for free. We're not charging anything for the phone call at all. But watch it to the end of this video. Make sure it sounds like something you're interested in. And then if you are, click the link down below and book a call with us. And that way we can actually, give you some specific advice that's specific for your business and your situation. Now, of course, guys, I try to put out some of these guides, every week. But if you guys like this, of course, hit that subscription button, hit that notification bell, and let's go ahead and jump into it. But before we do, I just want to lay this out really clear. My goal with this series of videos, and it might be 3, maybe 4 videos, is to get everyone watching this a general understanding and plan of how to scale their business or how to put it on autopilot. So that's my plan with this series. If that sounds like something you want to do, and I'm talking, when I say business, I mean specifically surplus funds, then make sure you actually watch this video to the end because it'll explain it to you, and let's go ahead and jump into it. The first thing you have to understand about business and surplus funds is what I call the cash flow quadrant. And many of you guys have probably already seen this before. I didn't make this up, obviously. This is Robert Kiyosaki. Okay, I'm gonna put RK for Robert Kiyosaki. Big real estate investor guy. Hopefully you guys have heard of him. If you're not, don't worry about it, doesn't matter. But let me explain to you what this cash flow quadrant is. So there's only 4 ways to make money. Okay, you're either an employee, which is pretty self-explanatory. You're self-employed, which I'll explain in a second. You're a big business owner, or you're in the B quadrant, the business quadrant, or you're an investor. That's it. Those are the only 4 ways to make money. So employee is pretty self-explanatory. You're selling your money, or you're selling your time for money. Self-employed, you're doing the same thing. You're selling your time. Now, granted, you're probably making a little bit more money, but this is kind of where most people get stuck with surplus funds. So it's kind of perfect that it's the S quadrant because, a lot of people, they're employees, or even if they're previous business owners, but they get stuck in this S quadrant because they don't know how to get out of the S quadrant, and where you really want to be with surplus funds is over here in the B quadrant, okay? So the S quadrant, again, is you're still selling your time for money. Now, how this happens in surplus funds is, a lot of people, you guys make cold calls 8 hours a day. So maybe you're making 15 grand a month, but you're working 8 hours a day. As soon as you stop working, the money's going to stop coming in, right? And so what we want to do is we want to transition from the S quadrant where we sell our time for money to the B quadrant where we don't sell our time for money. Instead, what we're doing is we're building systems that produce money. So B is systems that equal money, okay? That's really the key here. And then the I quadrant obviously is, having money that then produces more money, okay? But I'm not gonna write all that out because I think you get to the point there, okay? So again, most people, they start out in the employee quadrant where they're selling their time to someone else as a boss. Then they move from there down to the S quadrant where they're still selling their time, they're getting taxed even higher, but they're able to make more money, okay? But then we ultimately wanna remove ourselves from the S quadrant and move over to the, lost my arrow there, move over to the B quadrant. Now, why do we want to do this? Well, number one is we want the ability to have time freedom. Pretty much everyone I've ever talked to wants the ability to be able to step away from their job or their business, whatever it is, whenever they need to. And whether that's for an hour or for a day or for a month or for a year, you want to have the ability to do that, because God forbid, you get sick, there's a family emergency, or you just want to go on vacation, right? You want to have the ability to step away and still be able to make money. That's number one, okay? And number two is, if your business is completely relying on you, even if you have other people in the business, but it's still relying on you working, like as soon as you start working, you start making money, well then your ability to grow that business is completely reliant on you working more, right? So we want to try to get away from relying on you and your time to relying on systems that produce us money. And if this seems like a little high in the sky, craziness, that's because it is, okay? And I'm going to, in this series, I'm going to explain exactly how we do this, how we go from the S quadrant to the B quadrant. But I need to just start by explaining this, because if you don't understand this concept, the rest of it won't make sense. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me know down in the comments if it does. Now, the next thing you need to understand is there's two paths of scale, okay? There's two paths. So path number one is what we call the ultra scale method, okay? And I'm just going to type ultra scale right here. And what the ultra scale method is it's someone that really wants to scale up their business. They want to push this thing as far as they can push it. They're willing to bring on employees. They're willing to work a lot. They just want to make this business. It's someone like me, quite frankly. Like I love business. To me, it's a sport. It's not a means to an end. It's like, how good at business can I get? How big can I push these things? That's what I'm interested in. But that's not everyone. In fact, that's not most people, okay? But if you are one of those people, then you would fall under the ultra scale method. Now, the other method is what we call the autopilot method. Now, autopilot method, it's a little bit different, right? So it's someone, you still want to be making a good amount of money. You're not talking about making, $2,000 a month here. You're talking about making 15, 20, 25 grand a month. But it's for someone that it cares much more about time freedom than they do about pushing their business as much as possible, right? So with the ultra scale method, if you really want to push this, we have a student and a coach of ours now doing, well over $100,000 a month, right? With the ultra scale method, right? So you can push this thing to millions, all right? But the autopilot method, you're not going to push it more than 35K a month. And it depends on how much you want to work, right? But with the autopilot method, you might only have to work 15, 20 hours a week and be able to make that, and not even have to make cold calls, right? So if you're someone that really wants time freedom, then you're going to be more interested in the autopilot method. And if you're someone that's like, I want to grow the biggest thing possible, then you're going to be more interested in the ultra scale method. And there's no right or wrong answer, guys. It really doesn't matter. In this series, I'll be covering both of them because they're very, 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 very similar with, of course, some minor tweaks. And I'll be explaining both, how they work, how we teach it in Scale Mastery, and just kind of some baseline things of how these two things work, okay? Now, some pros and cons with each. So pros of the ultra scale method, the financial cap is much higher, okay? In fact, there really is no financial cap other than the size of the market, right? Which is huge, with billions, right? So, you can just keep growing it and growing it and growing it and growing it if you want to, okay? So that's, financial cap is much, super, super high level, okay? Whereas the autopilot method, if you want to set up a business where you're not working that much, well, you are going to be financially capped at some level because, you want things to be on autopilot. You want to make as much profit as possible. You're pulling as much money out of the business as possible. And so therefore, your financial cap's not going to be quite as high. You can still do very, very well, but it's just a different way of thinking, okay? Now, another pro of the ultra scale method is you can build a huge team, okay? For us here, we have a team of, between 10 and 15 people. I don't even know how many people we have at this point. With the autopilot method, you're going to have some people that work for you, but, really you want to stay around 2 to 4 people, right? Maybe go 5, right? But like that's really it. Right? So 2 to 5 people, and that might be a pro or con. If you're someone that's like, I really want to have a team, I want to employ people, want to bring people up with me, that's not the way to go, right? But if you're someone that's like, hey, you know what? I just want to make my money and, have as few employees, as few managing I got to do, perfect. Then that's what you want to do, right? So it can be that's why I'm putting it in pros in both, because this is a big team, okay? So, you have the opportunity to employ more people. This is a smaller team, but that might be a good thing for you, depending on what you want. Now, some of the cons of the ultra scale method are it takes a lot of time, right? If you're rapidly growing a business, you're spending a lot of time in that business, right? So a lot of time, a lot more, stress and energy that goes into it. And again, the further you want to push this thing, the the more time and energy and stress you're gonna have to put into it. Whereas with the autopilot method, some of the pros are the opposite. You know, it's a lot less time. Now you still have to spend a lot of time setting things up and all that, but once you get it going, you can spend less time managing it, less time, you know, dealing with everything going on. So I'll just put less time. Okay. You know, less stress, right? So again, it comes down to really the question is, what do you want? You know, so if you're watching this video right now, really ask yourself, well, you know, if everything went perfectly for me with this business, what do I want from this business? Do I want a huge company? Do I want an autopilot? Like, what do you want? What makes sense for you? That's what you need to get really, really clear on first. And once you have that, then you can start implementing everything I'll be teaching you over these next few videos. So now going more in depth into these strategies and how they work, I want to talk to you a second about kind of the different sectors of this business and how it works. There's really only two parts of a surplus fund business, okay? Now, you know, you could argue that there's more than this, and you know, there is and whatever, but there's two main parts that we're going to focus on in these videos, okay? Again, there's more than this, but just for the sake of time, for the sake of importance, these are the two most important by like 100x, so we're going to focus on these. The first is obviously your marketing and actually closing deals. Okay, that's the key. Okay, marketing, I'm going to put marketing / sales. Okay, the second is fulfillment. So once we get someone that is, you know, I just misspelled that word, but that's okay. Once we get someone that, you know, has actually agreed to work with us and signed the contracts, you know, how do we go about actually fulfilling on that contract, making sure that they get paid, that it's a good process for them, all of that. And depending on what your strategy you chose before is going to change on how you deal with both of these things, right? So with marketing and sales, for instance, we want to build what I call an ADAP. And that's a big fancy acronym that I made up, and all it means is automated deal acquisition process. So in other words, how do we get deals automatically, right? With a very simple process where we acquire deals, basically. I kind of said that backwards, but I think you get the point, okay? And this is the difference between automated marketing versus manual marketing, which we're going to go through in video number 2, okay? But before we go through that, just understand there's manual marketing, there's automated marketing. Most of you guys are doing manual marketing, which is like cold calls. You're, you know, manually texting people, you're manually emailing people, you're, you know, whatever it is, okay? So long story short, you know, basically we want to create a process that gets deals for us automatically without us having to be tied to that process. And that will allow us to grow rapidly and put it on autopilot if we want to, okay? But without this, you know, we can't do anything. All right, so this has to come first. And then once we've established this, the second part of this is to create what we call an automated deal fulfillment process, okay, or an ADFP. And so what that looks like is, again, once you get a deal, how does it, you know, the contracts get signed, everything gets taken care of automatically without you doing anything, right? Without it just comes into a system and boom. This is where we go back to that cash flow quadrant, right? Where right now, if you get a deal, right, and you're in that S quadrant, well, you have to contact the person, you have to talk to the person, yada, 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 right? But if you had this in place, an ADFP, well, now you're in the B quadrant, because guess what happens? Instead of you having to do that, a system does it for you. You don't have to worry about it, right? And so that's where we want to get to. Now, depending on whether you want the ultra scale method or the autopilot method, is going to change on how we do these, right? It's going to change on how we do the automated deal acquisition process and how we do the automated deal fulfillment process. It's also going to change on which one we need to spend more time on, if we even need to spend time on the fulfillment side. You know, it's going to really change our priorities. So that's why it's so important to know in the first part where it's talking about, you know, which sounds more like you, it's important to know that and have that clear before we continue. Now, going even further than that cash flow quadrant, there's this thing in surplus funds that I found that really is this glass ceiling, okay? And people, they get stuck and they just bump their head over and over and over and over and over, and they can never break through it because they don't understand how this glass ceiling works. And so maybe you might be watching this thinking the same thing. And this glass ceiling, by the way, is at different levels for different people. You know, depending on your phone skills, on your leads, on all of this, it might be at, you know, 10K a month, okay, which is right around, you know, a little bit higher than where I usually see. I usually see it around 7K per month, which is where the glass ceiling usually is, but it can even be at 0K per month, right? It could be literally, you won't be making any money. It'll just be hitting your, hitting that glass ceiling over and over again. So if that's been you, it's not your fault, okay? I'm gonna explain exactly what is going on and why you keep ramming into that glass ceiling of not being able to get the results that you want to get. Whether that's 0 deals, you're not able to get your first deal, or 10K and you're just stuck at 10K, whatever it is, I'm gonna explain why that's happening. So you see, what happens is there is this anti-flywheel. So a flywheel in business is when everything in the business makes everything else in the business better. So for example, Uber, right? The carpool company, where you go on the app and you can get someone to pick you up, assuming you live in a relatively populated area, you can get someone to pick you up in like 5 minutes, right? Well, the thing about Uber is, the more drivers that are on Uber, the faster that someone can get a ride. And because they can get a ride faster, there's going to be more people on the app wanting to get a ride because you can get a ride super fast, right? And because there's more riders wanting to get a ride, there's going to be more drivers because there's more demand for drivers, so they can make more money. And because there's more drivers, you see what I'm saying? Rides are faster. And because the rides are faster, there's more riders. Because there's more riders, there's more drivers. Because there's more drivers, it's faster. Because it's faster, there's more riders. You see what I'm saying? It goes up and up and up and up forever. Well, here's what happens with surplus funds. So let's say you're cold calling, right? That's how most people start. Well, the more deals that you get, the less time you have to cold call, okay? And the less time you call, the less deals that you get, okay? And the reason why you have less time to make deals is because, you're busy working with the deals that you already have, right? So you're working with those deals that you've gotten, so you're spending less time on marketing, so therefore you're getting less deals. And you're getting less deals, so therefore you have more time on marketing now. And because you have more time on marketing, you can get more deals, right? And so you see what happens is you go up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down, but you never break past that point. Because what happens is you're down here, you have no deals, you have all the time in the world, you get a bunch of deals, right? And then guess what happens? Well, you get all these deals, so you can't spend time marketing, so then it just falls off a cliff again, and then you start all the way back from 0. Then, oh, cool, okay, I've got no deals, so I can spend all this time working. Well, then boom, you come up here. And then what happens? You hit that glass ceiling again because you can't physically make more calls. You're running out of time. Boom, you fall back down again. And it goes over and over and over and over again. I've seen people run into this for months. I mean, years, literally years, right? And by the way, this is not just applicable for surplus. This is applicable for any real estate business where you're doing manual marketing. And that's the problem with manual marketing. If your goal is to make 5 to 7K a month, and like that's all you ever want to do, perfect. Do cold calling. You're going to be set there. It's going to be amazing. But the problem is what happens once you build your business one way using manual marketing, and then let's say you get to that 7K and you're like, well, I want to make 15. I want to double this. All right. What happens is you get stuck because the only way for you to grow is to do more manual marketing. And we just explained this, right? You get more deals. Well, then you have less time to do marketing. You have less time to do marketing. You get less deals. You have less deals. You get more time to do marketing. You have more time. You get more deals. Right? So it's just up and down and up and down and up and down. So we need to create a system where it just flywheels up and there's no hard ceiling, right? And you need to build that from day one. You see, the problem is, again, if you go and you start the manual marketing like, cool, I want 7K, and then you're like, well, I want to get to 15 now. Well, what happens at that point is now you have to go start all the way back from square one and rebuild your entire business with all new, techniques, strategies, everything that's completely different than the way you built it the first time. Okay, so it doesn't make any sense. You're just wasting time. If you want to get to a higher goal that you don't want to be capped at, well, then you need to do that from day one, right? You can't wait until later. So hopefully that makes sense. So in order to get this right and scale our business to however we want to scale it to, or to turn on autopilot, whatever it is, you basically need to have a few main things in place. The first thing you need is a really solid foundation. Okay. Now, if you guys have not seen my original bootcamp series here on YouTube, I'll link that one down below. This is what it looks like right here. It's the Ultimate Surplus Fund Overage Guide, 0 to 12K. It's a 4-part course here on YouTube. This is to get your foundation. All right, it's literally 4 videos on just getting your foundation. Okay, and the foundation really comes to having a state and having a niche. Okay, that's really what you need. You need a state and you need a niche. And it goes into more in depth than that, but I think you guys get the point there. So once you've got that, the second part is your data setup. Okay, so that this looks like is leads and skip tracing. Okay, And we will be covering this a little bit in this series, so make sure you guys watch that. That'll be one of the later videos. The third thing you need to have get set up is automated marketing, okay? And I'll be talking about that a lot in this series, you know, how to basically stop making cold calls and get to a point where, you know, people are just raising their hands saying, hey, I am interested in doing this business. I'm interested in, you know, going out there and, quite frankly, you know, working with you, or at least learning more about recovering my money, right? Without you having to actually call them and talk to them, okay? And then the fourth one is basically automated fulfillment. Auto fulfillment. I'm going to put auto F, which also is kind of team building. So we'll be talking about that as well. You know, that's where you talk about bringing on VAs. We have a full system and process for that. I'll explain a little bit on these videos. But yeah, okay, so these two are going to be the main parts of these videos. But we will talk a little bit about the data probably towards the end of this series, because, you know, if you don't have the data down, then it's, you know, the rest of the stuff doesn't really matter that much. Okay, so with that being said, this was kind of the intro video breaking down how this series is going to work and some important concepts you have to know before we move forward. Hopefully that makes sense. If you guys have things you want me to talk about in the series, put them down below in the comments. Of course, like and subscribe if you are not already, because once per month we actually do a free giveaway for some of my mini courses. So you want to be notified when that happens. So make sure you not only subscribe, but you hit that notification bell as well. And finally, you know, again, be ready for the next one. If you guys haven't already, go back and watch that, you know, foundation series that I talked about earlier. And with that being said, I will see you on the next video.